Thanks for joining us here on the Retirement Income Source, where it's always going to be about investing for income the old-fashioned way. Not just any income. I'm talking about income that does not change, doesn't matter if we're going through what we're seeing in the last couple of weeks. It makes people think, okay, do I have my money where it should be? Makes people concerned very quickly. Through our meetings and through our reviews, even whenever I'm talking with people, I'm trying to continue to remind them that the income was what we invested in. What changes is the volatility of their balances, and there is a difference. You see, once you establish the income in an income plan, a true income plan, it doesn't change. It's the most reliable part of your portfolio. That's the reason why I put so much emphasis in retiring and utilizing income-based instruments. Not just any instrument will provide you income. And that should be very concerning to people out there that are really just returning their own money to them, what it took them 30, 40 years to accumulate, and they're basically only been able to pocket a little bit of income, not real income, not enough income, and so therefore they have to sell their principal and they have to reduce it. And when they reduce it, they have to make that back up now because now they've reduced their share count inside their portfolio. See, income the old-fashioned way is the way people have used to do it for years and years, and then somehow the philosophy investing for income got it kind of lost in the shuffle somewhere. Not as many people talk about it, other than high net worth individuals still do it, large corporations still do it, and so why is it that some people, few do it and many do not? And a lot of it is just where you get your advice. Mainstream is really where everybody is still getting their advice. In other words, they're basing everything on total return in hopes that the markets will remain unchanged. Knowing I know that the markets doesn't ever remain unchanged. Markets has to go up. They have to go down. They do both, and we can agree on that, and then sometimes they go sideways. Well, when the markets are volatile, people don't know if they're, if they even can spend income, right? Because when the markets took a 10, 15% hit this past few weeks, and it did it pretty quickly, people are starting to run nervous. Well, if you're earning the income the old-fashioned way, those paychecks doesn't change if you're doing it and doing it correctly. I'm Tim Sparks. I'm your host today on the Retirement Income Source, and this show is sponsored by Sparks Financial Group, right here in the heart of the Bluegrass, Lexington, Kentucky, serving both Louisville, Lexington, Northern, and Central Kentucky markets. And what we teach here on the show is based on the last 20 years of my experience of what to do and, most importantly, what not to do. At the end of the day, a pre-retiree or retiree wants to get it right. They want it to end well. We all do. We got to have something in our corner, right, in order to be able to win the game of retirement and not running out of money before we run out of breath. Well, I hate to tell you this, although we're in an information society out there today, and people are, they're inundated with information, and the more information you get, sometimes the more confusing things can get. I've had people tell me that they've shopped around 8 or 10 advisors, and they tell me that they feel like they did when they started. And you know why? Because you're listening to somebody, include myself too. You got to understand there's a philosophy out there that you're going to hang your hat on, and you're going to pick and choose which one makes the most sense for you. Well, what I share with you here on the radio is our philosophy. We provide income first. That's our model. Income that doesn't change even if there's volatility. And if the market drops 20%, drops 30% or 40%, the income does not change. Keep in mind, most people like their money being in the market. You know why? They fear missing out. They don't want to lose out when the markets do well. And at the same time, they don't want to lose a lot of money because at the end of the day, they still got to have income. And so we decided, we're going to hire Top analysts, that's all they do, focus on individual stocks, individual bonds, provide the paychecks, and ride out the market inclines and declines. We might as well face it, the markets are going to do two things. They're going to go up and they're going to go down. Here's what I can tell you. Be diligent in where you go and where you land. Because at the end of the day, what you choose and what philosophy you choose will make a difference of how much you will have left in your balances, let's just say 20, 25 years from now. Spending principle to me is the most cancerous way to retire. And most people don't even know they're doing it. So we're going to go and talk a few minutes, just a little bit more about some things you need to know about estate planning, and then we're going to start segueing into the topic of income doesn't change. And I'm going to do that so that way I can finish out what it is I want to be able to share with you. And sometimes it can be a show or it can be half of another show to be able to complete my thoughts, so that way you know what you need to do. After all, you're going down the road, you're listening, we might as well make it worthwhile. But there are instruments out there that are income first methods that sometimes is the first place that people want to know, what do you mean by income first? I'm going to be honest with you, the majority of the people that come in our office really do not know what I'm talking about when they call in from the radio. Well, income first, first of all, you got to know what tools to use to be able to generate real income. Now, I'm talking about income where you don't touch your principal. There is a difference. And most people don't even know that they're spending principal, because the market sometimes recover what they have left. So there's a commission report I'm going to get in your hand called The Introduction to the Universe of Income Generating Financial Strategies. It's all the tools that you need or learn from of how people out there today that have decided, if I'm going to get more mileage out of my money, I need to focus on income first. That way I still have my principal intact. Because at the end of the day, why sit here and deal with the fluctuation of the markets? And this commission report will help you to understand what tools out there contractually and non-contractually that help you do that. And you can have this report by calling 888-930-1080, 888-930-1080. We'll mail this or email it, whichever you prefer. Great read, short read, 888-930-1080. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks. And today we're talking about income doesn't change. I was thinking about that this week, because I feel like that every time I meet with people, this is the one thing that I really, in our reviews and when they call in and so forth, they don't realize that there's instruments out there that they can invest in. By the way, the problem with most people when they go into retirement, the one problem they got to solve, they need income. Well, do you want it to change if there's volatility? The majority of the people out there listening to this show, when the markets took a 10, 15, or 20% hit, and I'm going to say 10 and 15%, pretty quickly in the last week or so, if you took out an income withdrawal, I'm willing to bet you kind of second guess that. And if you didn't, maybe you probably embraced yourself. Maybe you had some kind of strategy there to prevent you from doing that. And the reason why I bring up income first and growth second, even though we're not negating growth, but in order to keep growth going and growing and going over time, I've got to be able to have income instruments. I do that kind of like a farmer understands the difference between farmland and the crops that he lives off from that provides the income. That way he keeps the farm. That's what I'm talking about. You can do that with individual stocks. Individual stocks pay dividends. Dividends is something you spend, and it doesn't matter if you got $1 million or $500,000. You get a paycheck every quarter. A lot of times we set them up where we can show them how to do it every month strategically and not touch their principal. And that's a great way to invest, in my opinion. Why? Because stocks have a tendency to outperform inflation over time and taxes. All I now got to do is take out income at the same time. Well, that's a marriage made in heaven when you're dealing with the right companies out there. There's companies out there that you want to own and that pay dividends. There's companies out there that you don't want to own that pay dividends. It's the same problem, and it's a quandary for a lot of people out there that really don't know really how to invest for income. You know, at the end of the day, you got to have somebody that's all they do. You know, you wouldn't hire a doctor to open you up and do a heart surgery. You probably want to hire a heart surgeon to do that. Or a podiatrist, like you have a foot issue, like I did here about a month and a half ago. My pain went away. Why? Because I went to somebody that's all they do. Well, see, income is not everybody is an income specialist. They may tell you they're getting your income, but the thing is, though, if they're whittling down your principal, kind of like whittling down a piece of wood to turn it into an object that you wanted to want to turn it into, then that's what you're doing. You're whittling down. You're whittling down your principal, and you're doing it share by share each and every month. And in the down markets, you're selling more. In the up markets, you're selling less. It doesn't matter. That doesn't even make sense to me, because at the end of the day, you want to win. 3 shows ago, I talked about how you can deal with stock paying dividends that typically in the last 25 years, this is factual data. I even compared it to what they call an income dividend index. S&P 500 outperformed the actual S&P 500 almost 2 to 1. Factual data. This stuff is not hard to find, and people don't really realize that, you know, there's instruments out there that have lesser risk to their principal in the down markets. No guarantees, because we're hard talking about stocks. But at the end of the day, you're trying to win. And if everybody says, well, you know, Monte Carlo scenarios and all that tells me that I've got a 90% chance of making it in 25 years. Yeah, that's true. You can actually do that. But the thing is, though, there is some risk there. Because what the Monte Carlo scenarios doesn't do is tell you what happens in patterns of market where the markets have no returns at all for sometimes 10, 15, or 20 years. Historically speaking, that has happened 4 different times, on average 17 to 22 years in length. If you run into those pockets of time, historically it seems like it's happened, you know, more often than not. You better be prepared to embrace for that in case it happens again. How are you going to get income? You're just going to simply not spend it all? I mean, I don't know about you. That's not what retirement's all about. So if you want to learn more about income first methods, I got my book out. It came out about 3.5 months ago, The Retirement Income Shift, How to Get the Most Mileage Out of Your Money. Written by your host, Tim Sparks. This book made Amazon's bestseller for 3+ months in a row. Number 1 in 6 different categories of personal finance. I'm proud of it, but I think you will enjoy the read. A lot of it's everything we covered today and then some. And I got a free copy for the first 5 callers of today's retirement income source by calling 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we'll mail it out to you if you're one of the first 5 callers. Free, no obligation book, 888-930-1080. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks. I'll be right back. Thanks for joining us here on the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks, your host. This show is sponsored by Sparks Financial Group right here in the heart of the Bluegrass, Lexington, Kentucky, serving both Northern Kentucky, Central Kentucky, and Louisville as well. And today we're talking about income does not change. Keep in mind, people, when the markets have a blip like they have here recently, income doesn't change. What changes is your emotions. And yes, you are, if you was to take out a withdrawal this past month, you probably felt reluctant to do that. You shouldn't do that. You should have your money invested income first. That way, when the markets do that, you were planning on that. Why? Because you had real income coming out and coming to you and paid to you regardless. It doesn't affect the balances. The balances that's in of itself is going to go up, down, sideways, or whatever. But you're still going to get your income. You see, your income is not what's tipsy-turvy in an income first portfolio. What's tipsy-turvy is the balance, the paper that you're looking at. Some people sometimes won't even look at their balance. You shouldn't do that. You should actually prepare for income. Quit playing this game of thinking that the markets won't go down. Most people are thinking that, in the last 10 or 12 years, markets have done pretty good. There's no way we're going to have a 2008 financial crisis again. May not, and I hope we don't. May not have a dot-com bubble or 9/11 like type crisis we had in the early 2000s, or even the inflation and high interest rate crisis that happened back in the 1966 to 1982. That was 17 years. Oh, by the way, that kind of reminds me. That's where we're at, kind of have been for the last couple years. We got the tariffs. People are nervous about the tariffs. I'm not really nervous about it. I don't like to see balances change, but it doesn't change the income. The paycheck keep flowing in during the fluctuation of the paper that you're looking at. Your balance may change, but your income doesn't change. You got to keep in mind, there is a huge difference. If you have contractual instruments out there like bonds and bond-like instruments, you're going to get your return of your principal back, and you're going to get your income every year that they commit to you for that certain period of time. 2 sets of guarantees. And of course, that's assuming that there is no companies or what we call default risk. Well, for just a few minutes, and bear with me here, and I'm only going to spend about 7 or 8 minutes through this conversation to wrap up kind of what we pick up where we left off. I don't want to leave a few things off the table that we were talking about when it comes to the fallacies of estate planning and why it's so important to have the right documents. A lot of times people don't really know the purpose of estate planning, maybe to some degree. Sometimes it's just based on, what they maybe read about or maybe they've been to a few workshops and so forth. But I have concluded that it's extremely important to have many, many documents out there. But I've also, as I've talked about in prior shows, just because you have a will doesn't mean you're going to not go through probate. It guarantees probate. Just had a client in here today that they're going through it right now. Their brother is executor, and it's going to cost that estate typically around 10 to 11%. Somebody has to pay that. Well, guess what? It's going to go through it's going to come out of the estate, and so not 100% of the assets are going to go to the kids, but in this case, around 85 to 88% of the assets are going to go to the kids. Well, it goes beyond that. I mean, if you have IRAs, and when you pass them to your kids, they're income taxable. It's a different category than it is whenever you pass it to each other as spouses. Spouses can share the IRAs and 401ks as if they originally owned them at the first passing. No big deal. It's when the second one passes and you pass it down to your kids, that's whenever it changes from a tax-free transfer to, like it did to a spouse, to more of a income taxable event for the kids. And it can be pretty significant. It's been said that 78% of all assets are of IRAs, and especially are usually spent in the first 18 months. Well, if that's the case, that's about 8 out of 10 cases out there, or 8 out of 10 IRAs are going to be actually spent. Well, I know a lot of large IRAs out there that are pretty significant. And it doesn't matter if the kids know about the Secure Act and they got 10 years to spend it. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, whenever you pass that money asset down to your kid, think about it for a moment. Let's just say you got one kid and you're going to pass down $500,000 to that child. And they could be really, really, doing very well. They could be astute and so forth. And sometimes you luck out, like I said, 2 out of 10 don't. But you can't leave at the chance. Plus, not only that, you got to understand that they're also married. So if for any reason that when this money passes to the kid, $500,000, you add that to their current ordinary income rate that they're already paying. If they're making $100, $125, combined household maybe $200,000, that $500,000 is going to get about $160,000 to a $200,000 federal tax haircut and state income taxes included. That's pretty significant. I'm willing to bet none of you, if you inherited an IRA, would have probably done that if you known it been your IRA. But you got to realize the kids don't look at it that way. They look at this as a windfall, and it's a quick one. And yeah, they're going to pay taxes. But a lot of times what people don't realize is they can set particular IRA inheritance trusts out there that actually be able to avoid that. It's a great way to be able to be a kind of a strategic way to be able to leave assets behind and be able to keep the taxes reduced, not at the lump sum. Keep in mind, it's you trying to control that from the grave. And that's really all that is. But there's more on that here in just a minute. If you want to know more about a digital estate plan, you can't get this anywhere else that I've ever seen. Digital means you have full control. Yeah, you can go into the websites, Estately, there's several of them out there that's got, these cheap, inexpensive book trusts and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to do all the work and get it done correctly. Well, if you don't get it done correctly, you don't get it funded like it's supposed to be and so forth, then you're going to go through probate. Really, all you have is a glorified will, in my opinion. But if you would like to know more about how to do this in one flat fee, have 100% control, and get your trust funded in one day and get all the things done correctly out of the gate, an interactive ID card that can save your life and so forth, then you want to call 888-930-1080, 888-930-1080. Again, 888-930-1080. And before we get to the main topic, income doesn't change, I still want to complete a few thoughts here today. And so you're tuned in right now to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks. And today we're basically going to be talking more in depth here. Just give me a little bit of time right here. I've already kind of spent some time on this, but I'm going to go more into it throughout the rest of the show. But for maybe the next 2 or 3 minutes, I want to tell you about power of attorneys and the purpose of these documents. And you would probably agree there's a lot of tragedies that people don't plan for out there that could be an inconvenience, because the problem with death, it is an inconvenience, and we don't know when it's going to happen. And even book trusts, we were talking about that earlier, and we talked about it in the last couple of weeks. At the end of the day, you don't know. There's 8 challenges out there that most people are going to have as long as they have a book trust. The purpose of a book trust, in general, this is a standard revocable living trust, not irrevocable. The purpose of that right there is really to avoid probate. But not all book trusts, in my experience with clients that actually has these things, have not avoided probate. Why? Because not everything was actually funded correctly. That's the reason why we talk about getting your trust funded. The guys that we work with, the attorney group we work with, they actually do that first. They don't do that, at the end of the appointment or wish you good luck on how you can do it, but they basically get it done right out of the gate. And people like that. I like that. And that's exactly where I have my estate plan is done as well. But see, when you get a book trust, you got ongoing costs, not the initial. You got $2,500 to $3,500. Probably today, what I see is the norm is around $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on average. Not a bad price compared to what it's going to cost for probate, but you got to keep in mind the challenges are you going to be able to, are you going to get it funded correctly? And I would say that for the 10% of the lawyers out there that do fund them correctly, you probably pay more to get that done, and that's okay. I'm glad they are doing it, because that's what I find the biggest mistake in estate planning is, not funding the trust correctly and efficiently right after you get it notarized and witnessed. But you also got to understand ongoing costs. The only way you're going to know that is you got to know when you're going to die, when your spouse is going to die, how many great grandkids you're going to have, how many times your daughter may get married or your son may get a divorce, how many times you're going to change bank accounts, maybe even sell your own property, buy another property, change your health care power of attorney because you've changed your mind, may even move from one state to the other. That means you're going to have it remodified. So you got all these things that you're going to have to know. Then, once you know all that, then you're going to know what your real cost is. It's not the initial cost, it's the other ongoing costs. That's why I like the one flat fee where it gives you control. So if you would like to know more about digital estate planning, you heard it right. In other words, it's just like having a bank account online, switching bank savings account proceeds to your checking account and so forth. This is all online. You can have a book as well, but at least you still have control. You can make changes on your own, et cetera, and also have access to attorneys 24/7, 365 days out of the year. If you would like to know more about that and have an interactive medical ID card, you cannot get this anywhere else I've ever seen, then you want to call 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. You're tuned in to the Sparks Financial Group Retirement Income Source Show. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks, your host. This show is sponsored by Sparks Financial Group right here in the heart of the Bluegrass, Selection, Kentucky, serving both Louisville, Northern Kentucky, and Central Kentucky. Today we're talking about income doesn't change. Now we're segueing into that income doesn't change, where it's going to be more financial, but I'm still trying to part ways from a couple of shows I've done here recently on policies of estate planning, and I still want to touch on a few more subjects before we really dive deep into that. The good news is, stay tuned next week and we're going to continue the income doesn't change, because I think it's extremely important to help people to understand. I don't think they know what that we mean when we say the income doesn't change, even in the current environment. Doesn't matter if the markets go down 20%, 30%, income doesn't change. What changes is the value of your statement that you're looking at. Those are statement losses. When you're investing for income, the income doesn't change. I know that's kind of hard to accept, but that does exist with bond and bond-like instruments and stocks that pay dividends. And it always has existed for hundreds of years. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the value of healthcare power of attorney. Now, I'm going to actually elaborate on this a little bit more, and what I think is even more beneficial, not just the power of attorney itself. See, what if you and your spouse are in a car accident and you're incapacitated? You know, just so happened when that state trooper comes by, looks in the car, and they look in the wallet of the husband or the wife's purse, and they find a phone number. They happen to have Richard on it, for example. The trooper calls the phone number, and they make contact with, and the trooper basically just says, "Do you know so and so here and so forth? Your name we found out here, and we're just trying to contact whomever to see if there's anybody know a next of kin to these people." And Richard, of course, responds. He's still hysterical. What's going on? And then the guy again, the state trooper says, "Why, this is state trooper again. I'm on the scene of accident. Both these people here, you just said that you knew them. That they can't talk. They're incapacitated, and we just want to know if you know anybody next of kin." And of course, it just so happened by accident. This number happened to be in the lady's purse, and this happened to be her son. Well, the son goes to the hospital, calls the sister, and they both, of course, at the hospital, hoping mom and dad are okay. But of course, at the time, they're still wondering, because again, they're incapacitated at the moment. Well, if you think about it for a moment, can the hospital really say too much to the two kids other than probably be nice? They can claim that they're their kids, but they have to really prove it when it comes to any decisions, because mom and dad are over 18 and so are the kids. So really and truly, with HIPAA laws today, you can't just simply call or talk to somebody not unless you have some kind of a document called a healthcare power of attorney, and then you got to do some verifications, your driver's license and so forth. Hospitals love it when you're prepared, but a lot of times people are not prepared in this in this category. And another thing too, healthcare power of attorneys, people don't usually keep those in the back of their cars or in their glove compartment box. Where do they usually keep it? Hidden somewhere at home. Maybe even the kids don't even know where it's at. Well, you can imagine a kid sitting there at the hospital in the waiting room, and they're sitting there thinking, okay, mom and dad, they were real successful. They always told us go to school, get good grades, treat people fairly, and so forth. They got a big house, lake house, got large IRAs, big brokerage accounts, jet skis, 4 cars. They've done very, very well. They surely will have this little piece of paper. No, they haven't. They procrastinated. They put these kind of documents off like most people do. They don't think they don't see the point of them until sometimes by accident they get them maybe at the right time before any of these things happen. The problem with life is it's full of inconveniences, and it could be one. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but you know what? It's better to have something and not need it than to need it and not have it, right? Well, at the end of the day, if you think about it, there's probably one person out there that would love to have that document if they would love to get their hands on that, right? Well, I can tell you of another lady that actually did the same thing, procrastination at its best. Husband and wife came in and they decided they didn't, they left and they agreed they need to do an estate plan, but I guess in the final analysis, they kind of felt like everything was great so far. And again, this is kind of one of those reaction things that we do, not necessarily being proactive. Estate planning should be about being proactive. That way you've already got your ducks in a row. That way you can not have to deal with the hassles of it if you don't plan. And also, I'm sure that you probably don't want your children to go through financial and emotional distress, but they will if you don't plan. But this couple, basically, and this is kind of a way I look at it's conservatorship. This couple, they were in their low 80s. I think she was like in the high 70s, and he was like 81 or 82, and kind of going off time. And she actually basically picked up the phone and contacted our estate planning firm, and they said, we need healthcare power of attorney. Want to know if we can get that pretty quick. And of course, they didn't know exactly who they were until they finally identified who they were. And they met with them like 6 or 7 months ago. And they told them, they said, yeah, we can get that. Tell me a little bit more. Well, I don't know yet because I've already talked to one other firm and they told me that they can't get me this document. I guess they were saying if they can, win the second time up to the plate right here. And sure enough, when we found out what really happened, her husband went to the Walmart, was gone for 3 hours, and somebody at Walmart, a representative of Walmart, had to pick up the phone. Associate manager says, "Is this so-and-so your husband?" She said, "Yes." Well, he's been out here wandering around, and he don't know where he's at. Well, people, think about it for a moment. That can happen on a whim, right? We don't know. It can be an accident. We can be it can be a plane crash. I mean, I know all these things right here we think we can control. We can't control the inconveniences of the way life throws curveballs at us. But what we can control is all the documents needed just in case they did occur. At the end of the day, it's not going to break you to be able to get these right documents in place. But it got worse with this couple. This lady had to go to court and living probate court in order to be able to see if she qualified to be her healthcare power of attorney. Well, guess what? She didn't qualify when they took her through a test. So they had to appoint another court appointed, something ad litem. I was trying to think how they call it. It's a kind of a weird name. And, it was going to cost her $8,000 of her estate. Not only that, they had to pay monthly fees. I'm sure attorneys out there can tell you what this court-appointed person is, and this person's one now is going to have to make a decision on behalf of her husband. I don't know about you. If her husband would have done the plan prior, this could have been avoided. They could have had the documents, didn't know it was going to happen, did happen, and now the wife is kind of stranded. She can't make decisions no more on behalf of her husband because she don't have the right documents in place. Now gets government intervention at its best. But if you would like to know more about how to get digital estate plan, in other words, you can have everything all under one roof, IRA, inheritance trust, everything under one roof, all the power of attorneys, et cetera, that we're going to continue to talk about or finish up here today before we get to our new topic, then call 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And what you're going to learn is how you can pay one flat fee, last estate plan you ever have to do. You have 100% control, and you get an interactive medical ID card and everything in place. And we're going to talk about that just here in a minute. But if you would like to know more about that, call 888-930-1080. This is Tim Sparks, and you're listening to the Retirement Income Source. Well, let's get a little further into this. We talked about the power of healthcare power of attorney and the value of that. If you're in a car accident, or if like the wife who's now needing a healthcare power of attorney can't get one because she doesn't qualify. See, what makes a healthcare power of attorney valid is if I want my wife to be my power of attorney, I have to be in my sane mind to do that. So I got to go fill out this document and make her my healthcare power of attorney to make decisions on my behalf in case I'm in a position where I can't make decisions, which could be life-threatening. Well, we got something that we talked earlier about the kids were waiting in the hospital, and just by accident they called Richard, which we know most of the time people don't never carry their healthcare power of attorneys with them, even if they had the ideal estate plan. Well, our company has actually come up with, not me, I shouldn't say me, a estate planning group that we work with, ITS, actually has something called a interactive medical ID card. And what this is this is linked to the digital trust, part of the digital trust, part of the ancillaries of this trust. And it's the healthcare power of attorney, who it is. You can put, unlimited names and phone numbers on this where it can be actually pulled up. This is something that the hospital can do on their computer. It can be advanced directives, living will, who your general practitioner is, if you're a diabetic, or maybe even have a pacer, whatever it may be. At the end of the day, you get the point. You can actually put all you want in this particular interactive medical ID that gives them access to this digital trust that has these documents. That way they know exactly who to call, and it could be life-saving. I don't know about you, but to me, I think that's pretty cool. And we talk about joint tenancy. Sometimes people will do joint tenancy. They'll put their kids on their house, their deed, or their home. Maybe one kid, a responsible kid, whatever it may be. So that way, when both the husband and wife pass, they don't have to worry about their house, the equity being spent down through nursing home or whatever. That's an okay scenario, and that can work out in a perfect scenario. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm just telling you what people have told me that people have told them, and you probably know what I'm talking about. The problem is sometimes there is liabilities by putting the kids. I mean, first of all, they're married. That's one liability. At the end of the day, if the one you put on the deed of your home is one of your kids and they're married and they get a divorce, well, the person that they're divorcing, your in-law, soon to be divorce in-law, can come in and basically do what? They can actually, take some of the equity out of the home that is actually theirs. Why? Because it's marital property at that point. That's one problem you have. You also have lawsuits. What if there's a lawsuit? What if, the daughter, for example, she's on your deed of your home, and she has an accident. It's an honest accident. So she's not hurt or whatever. She skids across the median, hits a car, and there's a couple kids in it. They wind up dying in the car accident. Here's what's going to happen. There's going to be a lawsuit on the hand of that person, and they didn't even, that wasn't not their intention. That's the reason why we call them accidents, right? Again, we're always trying to be prepared for all the unknowns. That's the reason why we have insurance on our cars and so forth. Well, you have limitations. Sometimes lawsuits can be big numbers, bigger than the limitations of those the coverage you got. So you have to be very careful with that when you are presumptuous in assuming that may not be that big of a deal. They just want you to be aware of that. Those are things you want to prepare for. Bankruptcies. What if the kids go through bankruptcy? They're on the joint tenancy of your home. This also plays a role, people, if you're leaving money to them in your IRAs as a contingent beneficiaries. We talk about 10 reasons why you don't want to do that. And there's a lot of reasons why. And then once you understand the 10 reasons, automatically you're going to say, I get it. I understand now. I understand why I need to plan in addition to that and not leave our kids as beneficiary designations. This majority of the time really works out very well. Why? At the end of the day, you want the trust to be able to control those assets at your second passing. So if you want to know more about one-time flat fee, how to get all the documents, living trust, the living will, healthcare power of attorneys, financial power of attorneys, interactive medical IDs, you have 100% control. You can make changes anytime you want. If you want to know more about that, call 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source. I'll be right back. Welcome back. You're dialed in to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks, and our show is sponsored by Sparks Financial Group right here in the heart of the Bluegrass, serving Lexington, Kentucky, Louisville, Northern, and Central Kentucky. Today, we're talking about income doesn't change. We talked a little bit about it right out of the gate, and then I kind of segued back in, trying to wrap up, put a bow on some of the estate planning things that I really still think are worth talking about before we dive deeper into income doesn't change. And we're going to again talk about more of that again next week in our show as well. So you want to stay tuned for that. But think about it for a moment. If you are in a hospital and you're in a coma, you become incapacitated, and your wife is there at the hospital bed, you have an IRA. What kind of access does your wife have to your IRA? Let's just say it makes up the majority of your money and may have something to do with your lifestyle. Income, and it could be a lot of things. People don't like to be locked out of their money. Well, guess what? If you don't have a financial power of attorney, the proper documents, she doesn't have any access to that at all. And even if she was to contact the brokerage firm that has her money, did you know that brokerage firm will be breaking the law even if they could give you information on that, or even worse, give you take an income out? They're not allowed to do that. You've got to have the proper documents. I don't like that. I want to be able to make sure that my wife has access to all of our IRAs and Roth IRAs, et cetera, in case something like that happens. Better to have everything and plan for those inconveniences than not, right? I'm wrapping this up, and we've trying to give you an idea what a financial power of attorney. I'll elaborate more on this right here locally here in a local college. We actually teach this about digital estate planning. You won't find this anywhere that I've seen yet. And keep in mind, I don't make a penny. I'm just sharing with you. To me, I think it's going to change the way estate planning is being done. But if you don't do anything, you do have an estate plan. I hate to tell you that. It's called Kentucky Estate Plan. And they're going to go by whatever the laws are for the state of Kentucky to be able to divvy out the assets. And they're going to do it the way they want to do it, the way they should do it, and not the way you want them to do it. If you have a will, the good news is at least you can take care of that, but will go through probate. Probate can be very costly depending on the amount of assets you have that are not really beneficiary driven. And even beneficiary driven assets can be a problem. So what do people do whenever they want to do things like avoid probate against their homes? They usually put those in a living trust. You can also put your bank accounts and so forth. I mean, again, you don't want to leave anything out, including the titles of your car. This day and age, cars cost a lot more, so you want to be able to make sure you understand the consequences of that. You can Google this and find out, what probate is, and it's a 6-month window. Everything freezes, and you want to make sure that you pass the baton to whomever you want that to be. It's usually your child that's probably more responsible and more level-headed and so forth. You want to be able to take care of that. You got other things you got to understand that you may need to, and more than likely will need to some degree. Financial power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, advance directives, living wills. We actually spice it up a little bit, and we throw in something called an IRA inheritance trust, which is kind of a control valve, so that way the kids don't squander through and pay unnecessary taxes on their IRAs. Again, IRA inheritance trust can do that. But if you want to know more about that, call 888-930-1080, 888-930-1080. 100% control. Trust gets funded in one day, not weeks, not months, which a lot of times it can take. Interactive medical ID card, et cetera, et cetera. Everything under one roof. Make changes when you choose. I've had, I don't know how many people come in here telling me all the time that they're always having to make a change, and they know what's going to happen when they make a change. You have to actually call your attorney. If you did it the cheap route, then you probably may even have to start all over. Now, as we complete our thoughts on the estate plan, and I kind of elaborate a little bit more, but hopefully you learned a little bit about that, things that I have actually learned that I spent a lot of time over the last year or so to learn, so that way I can share the audience that listens to our show every week, and we appreciate you listening. Give you an update. My wife went through her first treatment of chemotherapy, and as of today, she's actually feeling a lot better. Of course, she's got 5 more treatments to go. This will be done, I think, around June. Emotionally, it's always going to, she's really what's affecting her probably more than anything is the fact that she may lose her hair. I love my wife no matter what happens, and I really, really hope that she gets through this. A lot of people have been praying for her, and looks like God is really, really doing amazing things. And just want to give you an update that she had 3rd stage ovarian cancer, and she is the report couldn't be any better, and I see that she's much more animated, but unfortunately she has to go through and get another treatment here in about a week, and this again is going to occur 5 more times. So I just want to give you an update for any of you. I know I brought this up 2 or 3 weeks ago, and she is doing very well. Well, I want to kind of share a little bit before we go in to the end of the show today, and we're going to talk more about this next week, and that's what I'm going to kind of do from now on versus trying to end a show in one topic, because there's so much more I need to bring up, and sometimes I wished I think of something right after I get done with the show, and I said, well, I should have brought that up. It's always worthy of bringing up. Why? Because at the end of the day, people just want to know our thoughts, and we appreciate you tuning in. And so, passive income is something that you can do with individual stocks, bonds, and bond-like instruments. People use passive income for rental property. And rental property, as you know, pays you a check from the renter, income, as long as the renter pays you, but yet you get to hold on to the property at the same time. And you can do individual stocks the same way. You can get dividends paid to you. You can have your whole portfolio working for you. I know people that sometimes will put 3 or 4 years worth of income in the money markets while their income is, the income rates are paying, 3 or 4% right now. But at the end of the day, it's only going to earn 3 or 4% on that money. The rest of it, I guess their method of their madness is hoping that they regain that money that they had to spend. They had to actually create principal, so they had to actually sell something to do that. And I don't like that plan because you're going to get, you do run some risk there. Now, the biggest reason why using a money market for kind of like plan B and hoping that the portfolio will grow. Sometimes it does, and sometimes you got to understand, sometimes it may not. If there's pockets of time when the markets doesn't generate any growth at all, it's not necessarily not any growth, but it's worse than that. If you go through a 50 or 60% loss like we did 2008 debacle, or if you go back in time, 1966, 1982 for 17 years, again, there was 4 different times that the market dropped 40 and 45%. Those are, you're leaving things to chance when you do that. And so therefore you're now, since your portfolio is not really designed for income, it's hopefully to recover the money you took out of your accounts that you sold, the shares you sold, and create that. Sometimes it works and sometimes it don't. And if it doesn't, then unfortunately, that can, lead to a very disappointing latter year retirement. But if you would like to have better first methods for the purpose of income first, growth second, you do that by understanding how dividend stocks work. Dividend stocks are not easy. It's not for an amateur. A lot of people can get lucky and have a few companies that do well, but over time, you want income and growth. The word growth because you need something to capitalize on inflation too, because that's the other problem that you got. You're trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And you do it, it's more of a defensive income strategy. Well, I got an excellent book out there that can show you how to earn another, on $1 million, another $3,500 a month that you're not getting right now. And you can learn that by reading my book, Amazon bestseller, Retirement Income Shift, 888-930-1080. Again, 888-930-1080. It can be your book if you call 888-930-1080. Again, that book, no obligation, first 5 callers. We appreciate you listening to the show today. We hope you've enjoyed the show and hopefully you got something you learned from it. Always reach out to our office anytime, call that number and get on our calendar. We can actually show you whether you're getting the income you deserve. Everybody deserves a pay raise in retirement. Thank you for listening. We'll be back again next week.